Hello, fellow birdies, and welcome to another edition of Mr. Songbird's Writing Mukbang. Hope you've been having a fantastic couple of weeks. I do want to apologize first for not having it posted last week. I mentioned in a video that hasn't been published yet, but long story short, I've been doing a lot of work for my employer. Simply put, I don't go into too much detail. Basically, a lot of video transfers from one platform to the other. Today, though, I'm having a meal from Poke World. Honestly, I liked it so much when I had it with Crystal that I decided to have it on my own channel. Now, first, let me dig in. Now, today's topic of discussion we go over is dialogue. Simply put, how to do it properly in your fiction writing. I suppose you could use a little bit for nonfiction, but it's mostly for fiction. Now, in order to do that, I'm first going to go over a topic that's very important on that. It's called dialogue tags. To explain what that means briefly, let's say that there's a sentence that goes, the fox jumped over the hen house. Said, dog. Said is a dialogue tag. You would say replied. It's basically any word that indicates that the person spoke. That's definitely good stuff. Now, when it comes to what dialogue tags you should be using, as a general rule, the right answer is said. Because it's a kind of like a quirk for us. We basically view said as almost like it's not there. Like we'll read it, but we won't really see it, so to speak. Like our eyes will almost pass over it. Not literally, but most of your readers won't pay attention to it. Whereas they'll pay more attention to stuff like replied, denounced, stuff like that. And the thing is that for dialogue tags, unless it's doing something that's actually important for the story, like, for example, an action is a dialogue tag, like, Robert, impaled his foe with a sword. Yeah. I want them to be as unobtrusive as possible. Which is why, again, when you're doing a dialogue tag, you want to use said. Now, how often do you need a dialogue tag? That depends. If it's just two people talking, you probably don't need it more than once every few paragraphs. I mean, obviously, you can include more actions in between that, But as far as when it's a straight up conversation back and forth. When it's a straight up conversation back and forth, you can just stick to once every few paragraphs. And even then, that's only so that the audience doesn't get lost. Like, okay, who's talking? When it's more people talking, you're probably going to need more dialogue tags. Not every single paragraph, because the purpose of the dialogue tag, when it's not necessary for other reasons, is just to make it clear who's talking. And often, the way the person's speaking and what they're saying does a perfectly good job of saying who it is. For example, let's say John and his sister Mira are arguing with Annabelle. And then someone says, "John, you idiot." It's probably Annabelle. So you wouldn't need, likely to say, said Annabelle. It's incredible. I get to eat all these good foods for my and Crystal's channels, but I actually don't know a lot about their cultures. I need to learn more sometimes. Now, let's see now. Here are some things that can be done in the middle of dialogue. In addition to, how should I put this? You can have actions, you can have thought, you can have other characters' action. And depending on the point of view, you might even be able to have other characters' thoughts. But if you're having other characters act during one person's action, it's probably better to keep it relatively simple, like relatively small. Like, let me give you an example from a story from the second book of my series. It's still a rough draft, first draft, so it may have errors. Then, as Zarin leaned close, just enough to stage whisper, "I hope Carla's rudeness has been bothering you." He ignored the scoff from the young woman in question. "I know she has a tendency a bit abrasive." Now, notice how in the middle of that paragraph, Carla scoffs. But compared to my mind, it's very clear that Zarin's the one who's speaking the whole time. I should probably catch up on some of the eating. Give me a minute. I hate when it does that. I take notes about my planned topic because, simply put, all I can talk about it, there are some things I want to say specifically. Like that quote I just gave, I want to make sure I wrote that down. Now, let's talk about the dialogue itself. Come on. There are a lot of ways to handle dialogue. Let me go over a few guidelines. Come on. First, it's important to have the dialogue be realistic, but not too realistic. Let me give you an example of a sentence that might actually occur in real life, and probably has for many, many times. Well, I suppose you might be right. Yeah. Perfectly realistic. Not so good for fiction writing. Like, how should I put it? That many stops would make it clear, would imply something else. But also, it would just be more difficult to read, and frankly, just disrupt the flow of the dialogue. You want your dialogue to flow well. You might just be able to get by with I don't know. I suppose you might be right. Now, in dialogue, it's very important not only what someone says, but how they say it. For example, a character who uses indeed a lot, or I suppose, has a different, sound to them and how they talk than someone says, yeah, probably right. As such, how to put this? You want to make sure that the character's voice and how they speak reflects how the character would speak. Like, if you have a 6-year-old child suddenly go into a description that wouldn't be out of place for a 30-year-old with a PhD in theoretical physics, you've probably goofed, unless there's a major plot point that this child is super duper intelligent. Between you and me, it really irks me whenever I drop some of the food. So I definitely like this. Crab meat's definitely one of my favorite meats. Also like steak, but crab meat's always a special place in my heart. Partially because I get it so rarely. Because it's like one of those more expensive meats. Now, in addition to, like I said, in addition to making sure that the dialogue sounds like it's from the characters in question, I said flow is very important. And some things to keep in mind, like, how should I put this? Oh, I should probably go over some of the basic mechanics. Although that's going to be kind of hard to do in a video like this. Would it help if I did a more like straight up examples video, like I show examples of dialogue as well as how they be properly written or improperly written? If so, let me know in the comment section below. Now, not only is it important, like, flow, as well as how the character would sound, what the character says and how they say it tends to mean a lot more in fiction than it does in real life. Because, simply put, in real life, we tend to go with like the first word we think of when we're saying a sentence. But people expect that when someone's speaking in fiction, it means something more. Give a basic example. Let's say that someone said, "I'm doing this for my sake," or my son's sake. In real life, you'd probably assume the person is mental typoed. Like, it happens all the time. We're human. In fiction, it probably serves as an indication that the person's really just doing it for their own sake, and they're using fancy words to claim it's for someone else. That's why it's important to consider, like I said, not only how the character would say it, but how they do say it. Because even for a given character, there's probably at least 5 or 6 different ways they could say the same sentence and still be in character. So make sure you choose the one that fits what the character is thinking and what you're going for the best. Well, that's biased, and I'd probably do better with examples, I think. Now, like I said, I'm due on... Oh, blast, I forgot to do that live stream. I'll probably be doing a live stream for a video game. Maybe not today when you see this, but maybe tomorrow, Thursday. If so, it's going to be probably a World of Warcraft or Minecraft live stream. Might actually announce it before this even posts. Now, one question I get a lot is, why don't you do more like straight up, ASMRs or mukbangs on your channel? It's because I really I like the fact that this channel is a discussion on writing, and I feel like if I were to bring those in, it would remove that focus. Because I remember what happened with the Discord server last year, where I went from a writing discussion to being more of a general discussion, and no one was really talking about writing at all. I really want to talk about writing. For normal stuff, I'd probably do it on my wife's channels. Let me see if there's anything I'm missing here that I should. Yes. Forgot to mention a few grammar things. You can start each paragraph with conversation. You can end it with conversation. You can have conversation interspersed. You have actions interspersed throughout the paragraph. So, for example, you could have this. He slammed his fist into the guy's stomach. He punched his face. Your fault. Perfectly fine. As long as you make sure to follow appropriate grammatical methods. Like I said, it's okay to include the actions of other people in the dialogue, so long as it doesn't result in confusion to the point that it's like, okay, who's actually talking here? Again, rule 0, avoid confusing the reader. If they have to reread your work to figure out what the heck you just said, you have screwed up. Now, if you want to deliberately manipulate their perception of what's happening in the story, for example, it looking like it's one character who shot the good guy, but then it turns out, nope, it was actually someone else, but they tricked you. That's fine. Like, let them fall prey to that red herring, come back and see, oh wait, it didn't actually say that. But the description, the dialogue, you should never have the reader reading it and going, okay, let me go back through this so I can actually understand what they were talking about. If you need to, feel free to dumb it down a smidge. Like, as a general rule for your fiction writing, you don't want to go past like the 6th to 8th grade reading level. Because even if you're talking to adults, they don't necessarily want you to be discussing in all full-on jargon. They want it to be understandable and to the point. And frankly, part of what makes being a good writer is writing in a way that your audience will understand. Someone who deliberately over, I want to say intelligizes. Not quite the right word I'm looking for. I'm drawing a blank right this moment. Basically, someone who deliberately makes it so that it's over the reader's head might pat themselves in the back, but they failed as a writer. And yes, I say this knowing that I use indeed practically as punctuation. I know, it's an issue. But darn, I just like the way it sounds. Indeed. That is so. But yeah, flow, and like I said, make sure that the language is perfectly understandable. Now, obviously, each language is different. Like, I'm not going to give any advice on Spanish or any other foreign language. I only understand English, and even that's pretty much American English. Like, I don't know what a lorry is, for example. But the point is, the whole point of dialogue tags, and dialogue itself is communicate information to the reader, have them read and enjoy the story. And if at any point it becomes unclear or perplexing to the reader, then it's not doing its job. Like, that's part of the reason why you don't want to go with the fancier, like, replied, interjected in dialogues. Don't get me wrong, there are really good writers who have done that and done a very good job, but this is general practice. Because as a general rule, your audience is going to treat said print like if you put a period there. They'll know it's there, they just won't really pay attention to it. So yeah, keep it so that the audience enjoys it, and you'll achieve your goal as a writer. Now, if you can include a great story with a wonderful plot, some complex emotional themes, that's gravy. I definitely like the slush. Like, I'm a huge fan of mango. It's one of my favorite fruits after dragon fruit. And blackberry. I don't get to have blackberry all that much, though. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to go over? Let's see. Like I was saying, one thing you want to pay special care on is how your main characters talk. Because the one-off characters, like, your audience is probably not going to care too much about them and what they say. Like, you can afford to make a few mistakes there, and they probably won't notice as long as it doesn't disrupt the flow. But you want to make sure that your characters are consistent in how they speak, in their style of dialogue and talking. Which is one of the reasons I was actually doing some editing of a recent fan fiction by them. I'm still working on it. It's a run of fan fiction. I think I mentioned this before. Yeah, I did. But, so to summarize, Rama talks in a manner that's more appropriate to a teenage boy. So I make sure to keep the dialogue and the description in his point of view. By which I mean more slangy, more like not proper English kind of thing. Now, it's okay to not be like fully grammatically correct in sentences, but it's one of those, do it deliberately when you're doing it. Like, if a character has like a one-word sentence as "hey," that can work, especially in dialogue. Like in dialogue, there's a lot fewer rules. It's pretty much like, how should I put this? I'm trying to say this. Like, as far as periods and commas go, it's more of what you want the character impression, give the impression they're speaking. So, like, if you want to do a, Leonidas, this is Sparta. Perfectly okay in dialogue. With the description, you want to be a little bit more strict, I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a future lesson, but basically, you want to be as grammatically correct as you can be, but there are times that grammatically correct doesn't work for that sentence and what's being discussed. And it's much it's somewhat less important in fiction as in nonfiction. But for now, I'll bid you folks a fond farewell. Until next time, fellow birdies. Have a good one.